what was exciting for me was to go in a handcrafted boat. The second trap was close to a nesting ground where seagulls were nesting. We got a good catch there. But what was interesting, this is where I got scared. She was 5.2 kilos, a pike perch. And when she got onto the boat, oh my God, she wobbled the whole thing. And I was quite sure that I would be going into that cold water anytime. And I was literally scared because it was like the boat was shaking and she was shaking so much. We had a bucket and we had a thermocol box. So we put her in the box and then we just poured all that cold water and just let her dance in that box. She literally rattled the whole thing.
Moikka ja tervetuloa. This service project is dedicated to Fraser and Denver, my best friends of 17 years and fellow travelers who left their last scent, breath and paw prints in the wild rose country of Alberta. We co-discovered the Fraser School of Boundless Joy, which is a fictional story focused on the Northern Canadian Cordillera. Note that everything herein is imaginary with some dangling facts. Hope you enjoy the show. That seed that was sown for the Yukon is now germinating in Finland. I spoke about the journey starting in a village called Selkia in northern Karelia. This is a village in Kontiolahti in eastern Finland, an hour and a half from where I live in Kuopio. I had actually started following this organization called Snow Change Cooperative in 2020. There was a river restoration rewilding, landscape rewilding project 10 years ago, or maybe, I don't remember the exact date, 10 or 12 years ago. But I think they now have, after like a decade, they've kind of restored that entire wetland. And it now has around easily close to 200 species. So 185, I believe, is the number I had read on the website, but I need to cross-check that. And there will be an episode just on that story. There will also be an episode on the Hill of the Hawks. I can't remember the exact Finnish word. It's Havukkavara. It literally translates to Hill of the Hawks or the Hill of the Golden Eagle, I believe, but something like that. So I want to follow that story as well. There will be an episode on that. So I'm just laying it out for you based on what I know today. And in June, I think I will be visiting them in person. So it's going to be quite a ride. I will be traveling with my 2 dogs. So we don't know how that will go.
I initially had planned to follow them for a longer term, starting with 2 months. But I think Nora from Snow Change had a better suggestion. She said that, Letty, maybe you should first come for a short time and see the gamut of things we are involved in and also get a feel of the place. And since it's the first time in a Finnish forest, yes, it's very different from a tropical forest. There are no big spiders, like there are tiny spiders. I used to get very scared going in my forest in Goa, which is closer to the Western Ghats. And when I say Western Ghats, for all the people who know, that's like a very hot biodiversity spot with like way too many endemic species, and snakes and spiders are part of that. Nora was like, Letty, you need to get accustomed. And it made sense because I wasn't sure. So I was like, okay, so how many days should I come for? And she's like, how about let's do a week? Maybe you can drive on Sunday night to Joensuu, which is my neighbor to the east. And it's about 148 kilometers from where I'm in Kuopio. So it's around 148 from my house to the Joensuu city center. And I wanted to kind of capture every tiny detail in this episode as much as I can remember. I captured some of the pictures on each of the days that I spent with them. They were super, super interesting because there's so much knowledge in there. So Leticia Harma is the first person I met. The 2 days that she hosted us were brilliant. It was amazing. A great experience for me. And thank you, Leticia, for being such a lovely host. She has done her master's in biodiversity and conservation. I think the last 2 times that she was here, she was also in Lapland doing some research on peatland, I believe. I can't remember exactly. And this time she's come on a longer trip. She would literally be studying a lot of things. I was like quite eager to follow her, but I was told like on the very first day, I will not be spending time with Leticia, but I will be going on a fishing trip. So day 1 was all about fishing. Throughout the year, there is also this local traditional fishing in a handcrafted boat with Lauri and Carolina. So the master master apprentice program that Snow Change Cooperative started has Lowry as the master because he's been in this profession for over 20 years. So he is the master, and Carolina, also called Caro, was the apprentice last year. I went to Yuka Yoki as the starting point. Yoki means river, and Yuka is that area in Kontiolahti in Selkia. The actual spot, like Yuka Yoki, is where the boat was tied up, and the other boats were there. They had laid 2 traps, and I went on a Monday morning. That area is called Kangas Vesi. Vesi is water. So Kangas Vesi is the place where the fish came from. The first trap was like the experimental trap, which was placed, I think, 10 days ago, and we didn't catch much there. But I think what was exciting for me was to go in a handcrafted boat. The second experience was obviously the lake of Finland, the waters. Joki is river, so it's not a lake. It's in a Finnish river in eastern Finland was the second thing. So we went to the first trap. We didn't get much there. We got a bit of some bream. Bream is called lahana in Finnish. So we caught small bream, but I think there is no market for a small bream. So they immediately threw the small bream back in the water. And if the bream had like been there in the trap for a longer time, then they killed it instantly and threw it for the seagulls to consume it. Bream is what we caught, small and medium, and the medium is what we took. And then we caught perch. Perch is called ahaven in Finnish. From the first trap, that's what we got. We got a decent trap, wasn't that great. So I had a white bucket in the boat and we just filled water and we put the fish in there. And that was the first trap. And it was experimental, so they realized that there wasn't much there. And then we moved to the second trap. The second trap was close to a nesting ground where seagulls were nesting. So obviously, you can't place it anywhere because you need a license and you have to get the license from Finnish Forest Service. I know the word for forest is Metsä, but I think organization Metsähallitus, I think, is Metsähallitus. They literally give you a map. So Lauri and Carolina were telling me that you can't just put your traps anywhere. You have to look at the borders and where you have your license. First, you get your license and you get approval from the forestry department as well as from the elders who live in that area. That's like 2 approvals that you need to get. And then second, you have to get the map where you can actually place your trap. So the second trap was close to the seagulls nesting site, and we got a good catch there. I think we caught a lot of bream. That's lahana again for you. And perch, that is ahaven. But what was interesting, this is where I got scared. Like we caught, I think, over 5 kgs. She was 5.2 kilos, I think. A pike perch, a female pike perch. And when she got onto the boat, oh my God, she wobbled the whole thing. And I was quite sure that I would be going into that cold water anytime. And I was literally scared because it was like the boat was shaking and she was shaking so much. We had a bucket and we had a thermocol box. So we put her in the box and then we just poured all that cold water and just let her dance in that box. But I was like literally, I don't know the kind of experience I had because I was excited. I was clicking pictures, but at the same time, I was so freaking nervous because the boat was shaking so much. Like she literally rattled the whole thing. And I was like, okay, whatever, man. So we got the pike perch and the Finnish word for pike perch is kuha. That was a good catch, the second trap. And then we went experimenting since we had time and we were like, okay, let's look at the third trap. So usually, because it's a summer month, we went in May and it wasn't so bad. Now in June, they would probably go every other day because it's summer. They need to now check the trap every alternate day. So every 1 or 2 days is when they would go out to check the trap to just check if the water is too warm and if it doesn't kill the fish unnecessarily there. We went to see the place where we could actually place the third trap. And since I went with them on Monday and they were supposed to place the trap on Tuesday and then come and check on Thursday if the trap had any fish there. So we had 3 traps there and we got a good catch on Thursday. Another thing that I noticed is when they got a fish that was not meant to be, they immediately released it from the net and let it go. Or if the fish had to be killed, then they instantly killed it and gave it to the seagull and the seagull would come and pick it up. And that experience was interesting. So after we were done with all these 3 things, like getting the fish from the first 2 traps and figuring out which is the third trap, we moved back out to the Yukayoki point, that is the entrance of the Kangas Vesi area with our fish. And I think for me, the toughest thing was the next step. Like once you get the fish, you gotta wash it, but you gotta also instantly kill it. And I think that's where I thought about the reverence. Like in everything that they did, there was a ton of respect and reverence for the fish, for the waters, and for that way of life. I think that was really admirable. I was used to cleaning my fish whole, not like a fillet like you get it in Finland, but I like literally got my fish and then cleaned it up. And so I'm used to seeing that. We washed the fish and then we took it to the processing center. I can't remember the exact place, but the processing center was slightly away from that area. And I learned how to make a fillet. How should I catch the bream? How should I slice it? Where is the bone? And where can I remove the pieces of meat? And the second piece was how to mince it. So I needed to know how to extract the meat. And I think that was very interesting. Once the fillet was made, once the mincing was done, then it was time to pack it in the boxes based on what people buy, 250 grams, 300 grams, or 500 grams. And there was one with 600 grams as well. And then you mentioned from where that fish was caught, like Kangas Vesi is where the fish was caught, and the date, that was the 30th of May. And then the weight of the fish, the weight is 500 grams, and the type of fish. Like if it's just pure bream, then it would just be lahana, masa. And if it's a mix like lahana, ahaven, and even kuha, then you would write all the three fish and then write masa. So those are the things I learned. I literally followed the entire supply chain. That was the experience that I will always remember, like literally knowing how your fish comes to the table. And this is important because once the packing was done, the fish went to the storage facility. And on Thursday, which is the last day, I think, I went with Noora to people pre-order that fish through these sites that I mentioned in the previous episode, right? ecompy.net, Reco Food Group, and there are these other Facebook groups. I think Reco is on Facebook as well. People pre-order the fish that was caught on that Monday, and then they come on the Thursday and they take the fish. It's not every Thursday, it's every alternate Thursday. So we just happened to have this Thursday be the day when we were supposed to sell it. Otherwise, it would have been the following Thursday. So I just got lucky. And I think the place is Matkailu Satama in Joensuu. We went and we sold it to the people who had pre-ordered that fish. So that's the entire food chain for you. I think it was quite the experience for me, following the entire fish supply chain. When I was growing up, I was used to getting the fish from the fishing community. But when I moved to Finland, and I think this is a problem maybe in most developed countries and developed nations, and probably now in India in the cities as well, people don't really get to see their fish. Like they don't even probably know how a fish looks like because it comes in your fillet in a plastic. For me, it was something that I was so used to because I grew up watching fish. And it's important to know when you sit and have your fish at the table, where does that fish really come from? I was fortunate to follow the local fishing community, get the local catch, and it was quite an experience to follow the whole fish, watch the fish in the waters, catch the fish in the net, look at them in the bucket as well as the thermocol box, that experience of bringing them to the point, like the anchor point of the boat, and then take that entire catch, wash it, make a fillet, mince it, pack it, and then bring it to the locals and watch them pay for it and take it away. That entire experience was quite interesting. And I also took 300 grams of lahana, bream, I think, is what I got. They had a packet of Puruvedin muikku, and I tasted the original endemic muikku from Finland. It was quite an experience. Very, very happy. I think it was nice. And I think by mistake, they caught something that I found very strange. And they told me that they never find wendis in that water. Like whitefish, wendis is not found in that water. So when they found a wendis, it was very surprising. And they were like, what do we do? I was like, is this not, typically found in this water? They're like, no. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll take it. And I brought it home and I cleaned it and I ate it. It was quite an experience. That was day one. I then got back. Unfortunately for now, Lauri and Carolina are the people doing everything, taking care of the whole supply chain along with Nora, who then sells it. But it's just the two of them. They set the trap, they go check the trap, they catch the fish, they drive it to the processing unit, they wash and clean the fish, they cut the fish, they package it, they put it in storage, and then they again clean the whole processing area because obviously there's fish, so there's a lot of smells. You got to clean that area and then you got to head back home. So it usually is a 12, almost like a 10 or 12 hour shift for them. But since it was summertime, it was a shorter shift for us. Like I think we wrapped up by 4 o'clock or something. So they eventually want to grow out that business and figure out how to have more people take care of the food processing piece of it, like how to clean, wash, cut, mince. That is something somebody else can do so they can focus focus on the actual catching of the fish and the laying of the traps and get that rather than all the steps in the supply chain. If you are interested in volunteering, because if you really like fish, like I would have been a vegetarian if I didn't grow up in Goa. Fish is our staple food. If you like fish too, maybe once in your life, you should follow the journey of a fish, actually watch them up close. I was lucky to watch a lot of fish. So if you want to volunteer for this experience, like the fish experience, I would recommend that you get in touch with Noora Husari. This is an experience you should not miss. If you are far away from the food supply chain, like if you get your fillet in a plastic, it's very hard to evoke stewardship. But if you have this experience of actually watching a fish rattle a boat, like a 5 kg pike perch, a kuha, scare the hell out of you, there's just reverence automatically, and that contribution, that is your action, automatically evokes stewardship. Having said that, don't live in guilt if you can't do it. And I think a lot of people do that. They kind of guilt trip you. Don't do that. But the whole sense of stewardship is not about guilt. It is more about gratitude and joy. It should come out naturally. Like it has to be evoked. You can't force it. So guilt tripping doesn't do it, doesn't cut it for you in the long term. That's the message that I wanted to leave you with. Day 2 is about forest fire. It was interesting because that was a very big surprise for me. So I will talk in detail about day 2. Day 3 is about greenhouse gas emissions. We was measuring greenhouse gas emissions and peatland rehydration. So that was all about day 3. And then day 4 was all about old growth forests and uprooting invasive species. It was quite the experience, but it rained a lot that day, so we couldn't do a lot of work. But I still think it was quite an interesting experience for me because it was an opportunity to actually see an old growth forest and identify a non-native, exotic, invasive species and contribute to uprooting it and preventing it from actually affecting the forest. And then finally, the last day, initially I decided to go to Koli National Park, but then I didn't go to the national park and I went to a village called Yuka. And then we drove back home from Yuka, and that was around, I think Yuka to my home is around 1:30 or slightly less than 1:30. That drive was very interesting. It was rustic and extremely quiet. There was nobody there, at least for the first 45 kilometers. There are a few cabins, maybe some houses, but it's a lovely road in the sense that there's nobody on that road. So yes, if you have a flat, that's also a problem. You could be stuck there, but like it's Finland, you can't really get stuck because the signal is pretty good everywhere. Although I see a remote forest in Finland, just the fact that there is a signal everywhere, nothing really feels remote because you can always call somebody for help. You're not like, oh my God, I'm in the forest and I have nobody to call if I get stuck or if I have a flat tire. I will leave you now. It's been quite a long talk. This is Letty saying, as the Finns say, moi moi.
The intro and outro music is by Cooper Moore, courtesy of Free Music Archive.